Still on the concentration, you might be wondering why I talk so much on concentration, because it's a very important subject. In the previous talk, I've gone through the right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, and these three factors, when they are developed, cultivated, they become the samadhi, the calmness, the tranquility. That is the samadhi, comes under the concentration in the Noble Eightfold Path. So, what is the samadhi? The samadhi, calmness, tranquility, is made up of these three developmental factors. These three developmental factors. So, only when these three factors are developed, then you have or you gain samadhi, gain calmness of mind, peacefulness, and tranquility. Then only then the mind is peaceful and clear, then you gain insight. The last part of it, you gain the insight, the wisdom. And I will talk about the wisdom later on. And I will still continue on with these characteristics. How do you recognize the concentration, concentrated mind? How do you recognize them? So these are the marks, the signs that you can recognize them. If you do not know about the signs and mark, then sometimes you assume wrongly. When you are feeling sleepy and you think that you are very concentrated, or when you feel blur, you think you are concentrated. A concentrated mind is never blur. It's very clear. Concentrated mind is very clear, very alert, and you can perceive the object clearly, whether it is mind or physical objects. A concentrated mind is unfettered. What do you mean by unfettered? They are not tied up with unwholesome mental states. They are not tied up with a lot of attachment, a lot of desire. Now, if your mind has a lot of disturbances, and it has a lot of cravings, there are times when our mind are very attached to certain things. Now we are attached to certain things at different times, probably of the day or even different period of our life, and we become disturbed and agitated. But a concentrated mind is unfettered. In other words, the mind gains concentration, the desire or the craving weakens. It is not strong. So how could the concentrated mind be peaceful? Only when they are not disturbed by a lot of our wants, our desires. So the question mark is, once we meditate, then could we earn a living then? Is it progressive then? And of course, some would think that when you meditate, you have less desire, so therefore it is not so progressive in dollar sign, material sign. Now it may not be so. May not be so. concentrated mind. Even though we do not have that a cleaning on that disturb the mind, but a concentrated mind could be peaceful and calm and has a very strong direction, and therefore could attain the goal that the mind sets up to do. So it does not mean that when we have desire, then we become successful. No, because a desire always associate with the unwholesome, and we get agitation. When we have strong desire, we get a lot of agitation in our mind, and that distracted our goal. When we can't get along with people, even our colleagues, even our workers, and therefore they can't get along with us. When we put a lot of demands on them, and because of our strong desire, we become bad temper, and so becomes an obstruction to our goal, to what we want in life, or to be successful. So many people do think that we need to have strong desire to get what we want in life. So it may not be so. Sometimes strong desire becomes digressive rather than progressive, because it becomes a hindrance, a barrier, makes our mind disturbed. We can't think clearly, produce a lot of frustration if we can't get what we want in life, and sometimes produce a lot of stress, frustration, anger, ill will, remorse, and that is an obstruction to our goal. To get towards the goal, we need to have a peaceful mind, a mind that sets to the direction and is not obstructed by our negative mind. So do not think that when you meditate that you do not want everything or anything, and you become regressive in your worldly pursuit. Now it may not be so. A concentrated mind helps to achieve whether spiritual goal or material goal, once you put your attention and direction into your mind. So it is unfettered, not tied up with a lot of craving, which produces a lot of disturbances of mind, such as anger, remorse, frustration, and ignorance. Ignorance is when a lot of time we blame others, and others that distract our goal or prevent our goal, which is not so. Ignorant is we can't see clearly what is these mind states, and what are the positive things and what are the negative things when these states of mind arising. So ignorance is we don't see the right source that obstruct our goal, rather than merely hitting out and pointing at others for our own non-achieving of what we want in life. So concentrated mind is unfettered. It is not tied up with a lot of all these negative mental states. Why? Because a concentrated mind is wholesome. It is balanced. It is not unbalanced. It is not easily influenced and tied up by unwholesome mind. But if we lack in concentration, then we can get easily disturbed. You see, an unconcentrated mind is easily disturbed because it is easily influenced by objects. Every time we see, smell, taste, touch, and they are unpleasant, disturb our mind. And why is it disturbed? Because our mind is not holding on. holding on to the concentration object, so it's easily swayed and affected. A concentration mind is emancipated, freedom from the five hindrances, which is quite similar to the unaffected marks, as I've explained above. It means it is free from hindrances. What I'm talking about is a strong concentration mind, not a weak types of concentration. So what is described here is a strong concentrated mind. When the mind is really concentrated, then it is free from the hindrances. So, again, a concentrated mind is detached. And whenever a mind become concentrated, means to say that there is this mindfulness and there is this right effort, and there is this detachment from the what? What is the mind detached from? The mind is detached from all these craving, this ill will or disturbances. It is detached from all these things. Now, if the mind is not detached, then you can't get concentration. Whenever you go to your meditation, then all these mental states arise, become very strong, and when mental objects arises, the mind gets hold of it and it pulls the mind to various directions. Then you start thinking and thinking and thinking. There's a lot of thoughts. Even when you hear a sound, and the mind gets attached to these objects and produce a lot of thinking and thinking and thinking. And so when the mind is continuously attached to mental objects or external objects, then you can't get concentration. So that is why when we practice in our meditation, we keep noting the objects and the mind becomes detached. When the mind gets detached from these objects, externally and internally, then concentration develops and becomes strong. So therefore, the characteristics, the mark of a concentrated mind is there is this detachment. So how do you observe whether your mind is concentrated or not? When you know that it gets more and more detached from your thinking, you think less and less, become more and more detached from external objects. You don't get angry so fast when people talk. You become very detached. You just listen, become observing. Then your mind becomes balanced. Then you can make very wise decisions because you are not attached to people's words, objects that you see, and you get very disturbed when you do not see the things that you want to see or hear the things that you want to hear. So mind becomes unbalanced. So in other words, even in daily life, you could understand your mind, whether it is attached or detached. When it's attached, you know your concentration is not strong. But when it is detached, when you start to note object, even in your daily life, you start to note what you see, seeing. In other words, it is like you're not involved in the seeing, you're not involved in the hearing. It's like you're just watching a movie. You're not involved. You're not involved in what you taste. You're eating, you're smelling, you're touching. You become very observant in your body feelings, in your body objects. When you feel pain, become more clear. Itchy becomes more clear. The elements becomes more clear. 4 elements become more clear. When you become more clear, you know that you are more detached. And when you are more detached, you become more peaceful. In other words, become more concentrated. Now these are marks and signs of concentration. And when you put your mindfulness there and put your efforts to maintain your mindfulness there, then you can see things very clearly. You could note your mind whether you have improved in your concentration or your concentration is still very weak. Yeah? So could you notice that? Could you notice that? So you can notice that if when your mindfulness becomes strong and the detachment develops. Now it is this detachment that is very important to see things as they really are. And that's how your meditation gets into insight and get into various levels of insight. You start to experience different types of these experiences that you have not experienced before. You start to notice that your mind becomes more clear. You start to see the objects of rising and falling. It becomes fragmented. It is not just one straight line. It is broken up. The breathing, when you take in the rising, the breath, and you find it's broken up like a row of ants marching, instead of just one line of breathing and of rising and one line of falling. You start to see it's breaking up into different segmentation, and you could experience very clear your other elements. For example, your heat, and your perception becomes more clear of your mind, of your attention, of your noting, becomes more clear. And as you start to notice different things that you have not noticed before, an indication that the mindfulness has become strong, your concentration has become strong, therefore the detachment of mind has become strong, and you start to see more and more clearly this mind and body. And you can go into each different levels of perceiving the reality, and that is what we classify as insight. Could be constant changing of these phenomena, of the five aggregates, of your perception, of your feelings, of your consciousness. You could perceive the changing from the hearing to the seeing, and you can perceive from the changing of the seeing to the smelling and to the tasting and touching. You could see it, you could perceive the changing very clearly, because the concentration has become strong, produces the samadhi, the peace of mind, and all the other mental states has developed. And of course, if you do not go so deep into these various mental states, you do not notice them, but they have developed. And only when you go very detailed in learning the wisdom learning, then you're able to analyze them. And that makes it very helpful, because you could understand deeply what is happening to this mind and body. That will make you a very good teacher next time when you start to teach meditation, because you're able to pinpoint them, able to analyze them. What is what? What is this mental state that is happening in your mind? So that will make you become a very good meditation teacher, and even become very helpful to your own practice and understanding. So that is why, as we go deeper and deeper into this meditation subject, I go more and more detailed and go very, as much as possible, that you learn to understand the characteristics, the behavior of these types of mental states. And once you become familiar with the theory, with the wisdom aspects of learning, of analysis, of spacious reasoning, then the mental states become more and more clear to you. And as you keep on meditating, you will not lose your way. Why is it you will not lose your way? Because you clearly understand what you are doing, and the resultant of your practice you could really understand. And when you really understand, you would not go the wrong way, even when you come into contact with a wrong teacher, with a teacher who gives you wrong teaching, wrong guidance. You will know something is missing. You will know, how could that be? It cannot be so, because I have experienced this clearly. So what that someone say is different from what you experience, and your experience is your best teacher. Always remember that. Your experience is your best teacher. What you learn and what you experience is your best teacher, because the knowledge that comes from your learning and experience is the real knowledge, it's the real wisdom that you gain. So that makes the experience your best teacher. Right? So, the detached mind comes with the concentrated mind. Except, of course, in the samatha meditation, there is still this detachment, but it is more this detachment of defilements. Now, this detachment, in Pali we say alobha cetasikas, they are different development from our alobha cetasikas in the mindfulness meditation. Our detachment is we note the object clearly. We do not grasp on to the object. The detachment of samatha meditation, tranquility meditation, is the detachment of the defilements. They become more and more detached from greed, from hatred, from delusion, or the hindrances. The more they become detached from the hindrances, the more the mind centered towards the samatha objects and get absorbed into the objects. So in other words, they also have alobha cetasikas, detachment, mind or mental states, but they are different. They are different. Even though you have the same alobha cetasika, but they are different. They are not the same function. One is to detach from the hindrances and gain absolute one-pointedness of mind. Ours is the mindfulness meditation is not absorbed into the object. By being detached, we still, what is the function of this detachment? We still take care of the hindrances. In other words, the attachment do not arise in our mind. We did not attach to the object, so therefore it does not produce ill will or greed or anger, frustration, fear, disturbances, and therefore when there is no restlessness arises, there is no doubts arises. So we have this detachment, the mind settles down, and we start to see clearly the object, and we see the three characteristics. So you can see the difference of this detachment in our practice and the detachment in the samatha meditation. So they have the detachment as well, because detachment mind arises in every wholesome mind. Every time our mind is wholesome, there is this detachment. But this detachment is different from giving. When you do charity, when you give $10 to a beggar or $1 to a beggar, then because it is a wholesome mind, it is giving, dana, there arises detachment mind. But the detachment is different. What is the function? The detachment is detaching from the $1. Because there is no stinginess. There is no greed and craving, selfishness to hold on to this dollar. So when you give, there is the detachment to this $1. But it is different from our practice of meditation, noting this object rising, falling, rising, this falling. So this alobha cetasika, this detachment mental state, when it arises, it is different. One who keep on giving, do dana, they do not give rise to this insight, realization, but they built up this non-greed, but they do not give rise to this insight, realization. And what do they give rise to? They give rise to birth in the Deva world, in the human world, but not the Brahma world. Brahma world needs concentration, jhanas. And it gives rise to a lot of riches. By giving, one receives. When we do dana, when we give, we receive back. Vipaka, cause and effect. Karma means the action of giving. Vipaka means the resultant, the receiving of what we give. It comes back to us. So you could see the difference in this detachment, even in the precepts. When you say, I observe not to kill, so there's this detachment. We avoid killing so that we don't create bad karma. And the result of killing produces sicknesses and illnesses and short life. When it is heavy, then the karma becomes heavy. We keep on killing and killing and killing. Then the resultant is, when the unwholesome karma takes effect, then we suffer. That is the Dhamma. That is what the Buddha found out. The Buddha never created this karma. The Buddha found out that there is this cause and effect. So what I mean is, the detachment is different. When you abstain from stealing, then you are detached from craving. You don't steal, you don't take things that belongs to yourself. So whenever there is wholesome state of mind arises, there is this detachment mental state. but they are different, which I've explained to you. The difference even between the tranquility meditation, absorption or jhana meditation, the detachment that arises is different from the detachment of our mindfulness meditation. They are there, but they are different. So you could see so many mental states that are different once it is developed. So they can't gain enlightenment, even though they have this detachment, because their detachment is the suppressing of the five hindrances. And so they get into absorption. Ours is not suppressing, no. Ours is when we detach our mind and noting the objects, and when concentration develops, becomes strong, and we see clearly the objects, and there appear the three characteristics. These three characteristics is assisting in this world, in this mind and body, internally, externally, in the whole universe. Only thing is, we do not perceive them because of greed, hatred, delusion. It clouds our mind. We can't perceive them because of these three roots of greed, hatred, delusion. And once when they do not arise, when they are not able to arise because of concentration, because of this concentration, which is very important, this concentration that produces this samadhi as well. It's very important, this concentration. That is why in the Noble Eightfold Path, once you practice your sila, morality, you've got to develop your concentration. Then only this concentration, which is important for the realization. When these greed, hatred, delusion do not arise, and you see things as they really are. Whenever you note internal objects, external objects, you could perceive these characteristics distinctly, clearly, as they are. You could perceive them, no mistake. They are there, always in this mind and body, internally or externally. They are there. Only thing is we are not able to perceive them. That is all. So realization, Nibbana, realization. Nibbana is there whenever there is realization. Nibbana is here in Malaysia, in Africa, in America, in Europe, in the whole world, in the whole universe, in the Deva world, 31 plane of existence. It is Nibbana is there. When the mind perceives things as they really are, no matter what you are human or Devas or Brahmas. Except, of course, in the lower world, they cannot perceive. They cannot. Their mind cannot achieve. Mind is stuck with a lot of very strong craving and ill will and ignorance. There's no way they could see things as they really are. If they're born in the lower world, in the animal world, insects world, betas world, the lower realm, they could not gain enlightenment, because the mind is very strongly covered up, hold on to by these three roots of greed, hatred, delusion. But human is lucky. Humans are able to do that. And so are the Devas. And so are the Brahmas. Only the Brahmas, they are anchored on a lot of mana. A lot of what? A lot of pride, because they are born so great and they are fantastic, they shine and they are so great, their life is so long. And so the mind is very greatly anchored on the mana, pride. They could not see things as they really are. They anchored on the I. I am great. I am fantastic. I have great powers. I achieve to a very high state of beings. So they are anchored on pride, very strong pride of I. So they could not gain enlightenment. Even they are born so high, could not gain enlightenment. So that is various devas. Sometimes they have hindrances, like Deva world. They have so much pleasure and enjoyment that they could not gain enlightenment because they have so much pleasure. And so therefore, if human, they have these paramis, they develop this insight, and when they're born in the human world, in the Deva world, they could still gain enlightenment because their wisdom take roots. So how could they take roots? So we must develop very strong insight roots in our cultivation. Once our mind goes into deep, we develop these roots, very strong wisdom roots, and we cultivate into various levels of insight, jhanas, wisdom, that when we are reborn in the Deva world, we could still attain Makkapala. We could still see things as they really are, because the sanya, all these mental states that we have developed, this perception, this seeing of reality, this sanya that we have developed from life to life, it carries with us in this bhavanga life continuum, that this sanya, this perceiving is different. This perceiving has developed, connected to the wisdom. So we perceive differently. We can see things that other beings do not perceive. Just as even humans, we are all humans, but those who meditate and who can perceive, who develop these perceiving, sanya cetasikas, we call it perceiving mental factors, mental states, see differently from those who do not meditate. We all have this perceiving, but we perceive differently depending on our cultivation, our other mental states that are developed. So you see how fantastic is this mind. And sometimes even the Adeva mind, and yet we do have this Deva mind. And even if we develop and have this absorption into jhanas, we have this Brahma mind. How fantastic. Human body, but the mind of a Brahma. Human bodies, we have the mind of the Devas, the 6 Deva realm. And of course, the non-fantastic human body, but the mind of the animal. That is the terrible one. That we should not develop, should not cultivate. It's not automatic. If we don't cultivate and develop wholesome mind, our mind goes down to the animal mind, behave like animal, even though we are human body, but animal mind. Kill people without conscience, do unwholesome things, harm people without conscience. Do not have the sila. That is what makes us human. Precepts make us human. We keep our 5 precepts. Even though it's not 100%, even though it's 50%, that is a marked difference between a human and an animal. Animals has no precepts. That make us so different from the animal. But of course, if we don't have the precept, then we are just like animals. Animals got a chance to kill us. And so is human. We got a chance to kill them. Why? Because we are stronger. Right now, we are stronger because we can do it. We can easily kill them if we want to. And when our mind is filled with greed, hatred, delusion, then we kill them. And we think we are right. We kill them because we are stronger. And so is the animal. when they're stronger, when they're hungry, when they have a lot of greed, when they're hungry, they want to eat and human around, and they're stronger than us, and they still pound on us and just take us as food, swallow us up so they don't feel hungry. True or not? Do you think it's true or not? You think about it. Think about it. And the mind is all the same. A mind that is developed and a mind that is not developed, that is the difference. A mind that is concentrated and a mind that is not concentrated, that is the difference. So in the study of Abhidhamma, we don't say that it is a dog, a cat, a human. No, we just only speak about the different type of mind. The different types of mind and whether they fit into this type of mind. How many types of mind? There are 121 types of mind, from the lowest being right up to the highest being. There's 121 types of mind. That includes the mind of a first stage of sainthood, second, third, and an arahant. Now, how fantastic. The Buddha see them all, put them into different categories, apartment, and they all fit into these various types of mind. And it's because of these, it helps us in our meditation. Learn to understand our mind, see whether it goes wrong, then we need to do some adjusting, bring it back. And so in the 10 types of wholesome, meritorious action, this adjusting of our mind is very wholesome. It takes us to Dhamma. It's our mind, when it goes away, we got to bring it back straight to Dhamma. So we call it the adjusting mind or straightening of our views. Straightening of our mind or straightening of our views. Don't get the wrong views. Don't get the wrong mind. Don't think wrongly. Think correctly. When it goes wrong, we bring it back. And that is wholesome. One of the 10 meritorious actions that lead us to realization. And we are back to this concentration mind. Do you want to ask question? I think so, because we can't finish it in this lesson. There are still more to go. It's a tough subject, very, very tough subject, and there's still some to cover. Next week will be the last session, and we have a long holidays.